61 Lounge in the Bank Plus studio.
Check it out.
All right. SEC Insider Hit this morning brought to you by the delicious pizzas at Bravo Italian Restaurant and Bar, Highland Village, and Sal and Mookie's in Fondren. Soon to move to the Eastover District. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Out of bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Our guests join us on the Shinerbach guest line. We welcome in Ross Dellenger, National College Football Insider writer, SI.com, Sports Illustrated. And, of course, Ross joins us on the Shinerbach guest line. Wow, Ross, there's a lot to unpack here on the LSU sexual misconduct investigation and allegations that are going on with Les Miles, among others, down in Baton Rouge. You covered that team for 4 or 5 years through The Advocate, still do. We've talked about it throughout the morning. We've referenced your article, other articles on other sites. If you would, Ross, would you give us the Cliff Notes version for our listeners who are busy in their lives of what's going on down at LSU and how Les Miles is tied in?
Yeah, it's just kind of been a couple of years in the making, I believe, and credit where certainly credit is due. USA Today's investigative reporter Kenny Jacoby has done a great job, and he's been on the story for more than a year. And I think it all spawned obviously with some buzz and victims. Kind of there was buzz. There was always rumors around Darius Geis in his past, and you guys remember when he dropped in the draft. And,
sure.
And I think what happened was some victims reached out to USA Today, and they started doing some prying into LSU and filing records requests, and that all led to obviously some more victims to speak out, and all of a sudden you have multiple football players, Darius Geis and Drake Davis, two former running back, Darius Geis at LSU, and they were almost at LSU simultaneously. Drake is a little younger; he was a receiver, and they had charges against them. That women came forward, and that kind of led to this just entire deeper investigation and public records into LSU. And one thing that was uncovered from it was basically a settlement the school reached with Les Miles in 2013 after he had several sexual harassment complaints filed against him. And the university kept it quiet. They settled with Les, making him go to therapy sessions and such. And only about 5 or 6 people on LSU's campus knew about it at the time, or were informed about it, and they kept it obviously under wraps. And he was coach for another 3 years until he was fired in 2016. But the complaints against Les were so believable and so serious that Joe Oliva, the AD at the time, according to emails he sent then that were revealed this past week, he recommended the firing of Les Miles then.
Yeah.
I don't think enough people were on the board or for it. But some stunning revelations for sure.
How surprised or shocked were you when you read that Joe Oliva recommended that Les Miles be fired in 2013, 4 calls, and F. King Alexander and I guess 3 of the Board of Regents went against Oliva? Were you shocked, surprised at that, Ross?
I don't know that I would say I was completely surprised, just because I know the relationship that Les Miles and Joe Oliva had, or the lack thereof, I should say. They had a terrible one. It was always bad from the start when Joe got there in 2008, I think. It just never – it was never good. And I think Joe Oliva was – he wanted to get rid of Les multiple times for multiple reasons, multiple years in a row. And so certainly anything to try to make a head coaching change, he would have leaped onto. So I'm not surprised, and not to say that he was wrong, but I think anything that he could have done to have Les no longer be his coach was something that he would have. So it doesn't really surprise me. What is surprising is the complaints, obviously, against Les and how serious they were, and then when he was under him or under his watch, how many issues the university had with filing sexual harassment complaints away and hiding them. They seem to have a cover-up of it that went all the way up the university. Two associate athletic directors have been suspended for basically a month because of their roles in this. So it goes all the way up, but obviously it starts with the head football coach. And as a LSU booster told me over the weekend, if your head coach is allegedly sexually harassing student workers, what do you expect everybody else in the building to do? And that's kind of how the sentiment was. And the big long report. LSU hired a law firm to conduct an investigation that they reviewed their report on Friday, and they talked to a longtime football staff member. It was anonymous. I'd love to know who it was, because it was some great telling quotes about the kind of toxic type environment in the LSU football program then. And one of the comments was, hey, the head coach can do it, so I guess we shouldn't worry about it. If the head coach can do it, I guess we shouldn't worry about reporting this stuff and reporting the, sexual harassment complaints against players and whatever else. So it, all that was surprising and sad.
Ross Dellenger, SI.com, Sports Illustrated, who has covered LSU for a long time, joins us on the Out of Bounds show and the Shinerbot guest line as we this investigation's ongoing. We don't know where it'll lead, but it does not look good for LSU and for their leadership. And as Ross is alluding to, it looks like a toxic culture. And, of course, Les Miles is still, although he's been suspended, I think, the head football coach at Kansas. And then the tie with Jeff Long is interesting, too. How about, as the investigation is ongoing, Ross, this could be interesting to see how does this affect the current coaching staff at LSU, because you never know, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and I'll be honest, I don't know how much is ongoing. I'll say that. It felt to me Friday was the end of it, or at least that's what they believe.
Okay.
The law firm. Yeah, I think it's done. Now, there could be other things that come to light, of course. I don't think USA Today's done. So I think there could be some other things that come to light. But from an LSU standpoint, they hired this law firm. They did an investigation. They've had their report. And, for the most part in the report, the current staff, you hate to say got off clean or whatever, but they weren't charged, accused of very many, if any, wrongdoing. But there's some issues in that report, and I tweeted out one of them. Yeah, that happened with Darius Geis in late 2017. It's in the report where he was accused by a 70-year-old worker at the Superdome during the high school championship games of sexually harassing her. And it was reported at LSU, and then a few days later he played in the bowl game, the Citrus Bowl. So there's some things in the report that certainly don't look good. But when you get down to it, the head coach, the knowledge that, or lack of knowledge that the head coach and other coaches had, you would think that they would have known about some of this stuff, but the report, paints a picture of they found a way. I guess the coaches in a lot of ways didn't know enough, I guess is what the report said. And so it was the minute they dumped the blame basically on the top level administration, who I mentioned earlier, are suspended for about a month without pay. But There are certainly some questions, and I'm sure USA Today will continue plugging away as they have on the culture there and just how it got that way, and if there are any more things that pop up.
Interesting. Ross Dellenger on the Shinerbot guest line, SportsIllustratedSI.com. You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show. With what you just referenced with Darius Geis and the current coach, well, some of them are gone, but Ed Ogeron was the head coach, is still the head coach, and everything that was happening prior to him being the head coach under Miles, among others. Is this lack of institutional control?
Well, the NCAA, they choose their battles, and this is one they have chosen for a long time not to fight. It's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's kind of sad in a way that the NCAA can penalize a school for paying, giving
a set of tires,
a car ride. Yeah, giving a car ride to a player to go to his family who are dealing with whatever, and he can't afford it, and so a coach giving him a car ride is an NCAA violation. The school can get docked debt scholarships and whatever else because of it. But when a school is purported to do not report sexual harassment claims and have a head coach that had sexual harassment, complaints against them and all this stuff, the NCAA doesn't do much at all. So I don't expect that this is in any way involved, will be involved in the NCAA investigation. They just don't get into these things. But LSU has its own trouble, of course, with the NCAA right now. They've got a basketball investigation going on that will probably go through the summer. And then they've got a football investigation that is mostly wrapped up and done. And, we had reported back in the fall about the self-imposed sanctions, and then later LSU locked on a bowl ban last year. So the football investigation is done, but they've lumped in, the NCAA has the football with basketball, and basketball's not done yet. So they're not revealing the findings and the notice of allegations and all that until basketball will be done. So it'll be a while before that.
Yeah, we refer to Will Wade as the American gangster on this show. The fact that that's still looming is interesting for the athletic department. Like you said, they lump the two together. Are you blown away that Will Wade is still the head basketball coach at LSU?
No, only because when all this started back in the spring of 2019, the university amended his contract and added a clause that allows it to fire him for cause without paying him a dime as soon as they get the notice allegations. And so I think they're waiting for that. So they'll just wait for a notice of allegations, and if it mentions Will Wade in any way, which I'm sure will, the university, if it wants to, can fire him and not pay him a dime. So that's why he's still employed at LSU, because doing it right now would mean facing a legal fight against his attorneys.
Ross Dellenger, SportsIllustratedSI.com on the Out of Bounds Show. That's interesting. All right, so as soon as that drops, that's probably it for Will Wade. What was your initial reaction? You talked about it in the article. You were like, maybe I should have known something or more or whatever. As someone who was on the beat and you had cultivated a relationship with Miles, what was your initial personal reaction to this as this dropped last week, Ross?
Well, I was saddened, and it wasn't the easiest column Friday to write. Les and I'd covered him as a beat writer for 2013, 2014, 2015, and before he was fired in 2016. I wasn't there all of 2013, the very back end, but I'd covered them for the most part of three and a half seasons. And at the time, we weren't close in any way. I was a beat writer. He was the head coach, and for a while, I probably didn't know who I was. But once he was fired, he stayed in Baton Rouge, and we grew to be pretty somewhat friends, and certainly acquaintances. And then I went up there and saw him when he got hired by Kansas, and spent some time with him and his family. I know his family somewhat well, and so it was all sad. It just made me sad. It made me sad for his family most of all, because they're great people, and his wife Kathy's wonderful, and we all nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes in our life, but it just made me sad.
Yeah. How is this different from, in your opinion, how is this different from Baylor, Ross?
Yeah, people kind of compare it to that, and I don't know that I would go that far with the Baylor situation. And I think I want to say it was Stu Mandel from The Athletic had tweeted something on Friday that I think was pretty good as far as what comparing the two, I guess, in a way, and looking at the two and why they are different. And I think when you look at the comparisons, I think there's no sign, at least in the report that came out Friday, that there was I guess a football cover up of the big allegations. Like the incidents got reported to the administration. So I guess it was more on the administration side instead of the actual coaches covering it up, or assistants or staff members. But I certainly some of the, as I recall, some of the Baylor specific incidents and incident reports were galling. I mean, there were a few in the LSU as well that were, but there were much. I feel like the breadth of the Baylor cover up was much deeper and bigger, and they were covering up more significant things. But either way, it was bad. They were both bad, and they were both unfortunate. In college sports, there's no place for either.
So was it a cover up at LSU?
I think that in some respects there was. I do. I think in some respects there was a cover up. I think the report from the law firm that was released Friday detailed a little more that it was. One of the big things was when Joe Oliva was AD, he directed everybody to report Title IX complaints, for harassment and things like that, and assault, to an associate AD instead of the Title IX coordinator. And it was dumped in her lap, Miriam Segar, one of the ones placed on suspension. And that should have not ever happened. It should have gone to the Title IX office. And football and the athletic department can't have anything to do with these complaints. It needs to go to the Title IX office, not to athletic administration. So there was some confusion and misrouting going on with some of the stuff, I think, and miscommunication at LSU. For the most part, I don't think it was a cover-up, but I think there were. You can't get me to believe that there weren't a few instances of a cover-up.
Ross Dellenger on the Out of Bounds Show, SportsIllustratedSI.com. He joined us on the Shiner Bot guest line. Ross, great job as always, and we appreciate you stopping by the show. I will segue here, switch gears. You're more than familiar with the state of Mississippi, and my man, it's wild right now. Deion Sanders, Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, and Dak Prescott's contract up in the air. I mean, we have so much content and topics we don't know what to do with ourselves.
Always, right? It's Mississippi. Always, you can count on the drama. And I was down there in Jackson a couple of weeks ago.
I saw that
first game, and got a big dose of the aftermath of the alleged locker room burglary. It was everything that I thought it would be. I was back in the SWAC, and it felt right.
What did you make of that, by the way? We've got a couple of minutes here. What did you make of the whole, my stuff was stolen, and Jackson State was like, no, it wasn't. It was misplaced.
Yeah, well, it's just, it was typical. And then it went back and forth. And Deion came back and said, no, whoever's saying my stuff was was not stolen is a liar, and then Jackson State later agreed with Deion and released a statement. It was just bizarre. I mean, it was very, as a guy who covered the SWAC for 2 years with Clarion Ledger back in 2010 and 2011, it was typical that those are stories that you come away with sometimes when you cover the SWAC. It's just different, and I would never trade it for anything in the world in my 2 years because it taught me a lot, and I learned a lot, and I got some unbelievable stories, and that will be one of them. Here's what really happened. Or at least what I can piece together what happened. And I haven't written about it. I don't know if anybody there has. I'm kind of washed my hands in the story after that day. But I think a child, who could have been as old as a teen, got in the locker room and rummaging through things, not necessarily taking things. And I don't know that this child was mentally stable as well. So I think there were some things happening there, and they caught the kid. He was just kind of rummaging through things, and they set aside just for safekeeping. They put Deion's stuff aside and didn't. I think nobody just didn't tell Deion,
Right.
And there was a miscommunication there. So I think that's what really happened. But it was bizarre, I don't know that any other head coach would have also handled it that way. Deion gets this big
Right.
first win, and he kicks open the door basically to the press conference and just starts spouting stuff about his belongings. Just the game played and his players be damned. He's gonna talk about his stuff stolen.
Right.
That we all know that wasn't really stolen. So yeah, it was crazy.
Ross Dellenger, keep up the good work, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right, Bo.
Ross Dellenger on the Shiner Bot guest line, SI.com, Sports Illustrated. He did come down to cover Deion's debut, primetime, with a big win over the weekend against Grambling. So they're 2-0. The Valley game was canceled due to COVID. So out of the chute, they beat some school, I can't remember. And Grambling was one of the ones that people were keeping an eye on, along with Southern, I think. Southern University. So he's 2-0, and we'll see. Is he going to be able to win his way out of this thing in year one? People keep talking about how he wants the Florida State job. I don't know if they're going to let go of Mike Norvell that fast.
Why would you? What?
But because Deion is a Florida State alum and one of the best players to ever play for the Seminoles and played for Bobby Bowden. But maybe there's another. I don't think it's hard to fool. I mean, look at what this stuff that we're all going through all the time. I don't think it's hard to fool athletic directors or even presidents in higher ed. I mean, they show us time and time again that they're just not really good at decision making. It's just this ivory tower. It's hard to this bubble, man. It's. I mean, all you have to do is spend some time on a college campus and you'll get it. But Ross says, no, I don't think his belongings were stolen. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Brad Edwards, College Football Insider at 9:30 on Nick Saban. You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show presented by Edwin Watts Golf Shop on County Line Road. For all your golf gear, well, it's Edwin Watts Golf